Are you in a position where you're defined by your age, and that's limiting you to pursue a dream or goal you want to accomplish? The More Than Your Age podcast is about having conversations with women who fully live their lives without being dictated or defined by their age. This is a space to encourage women who feel blocked to pursue a dream or goal based on their life circumstances. Welcome to the More Than Your Age podcast. I am your host, Erica Pasbar. Let's start living life fully and become more than your age. Welcome back to the More Than Your Age podcast. I'm so glad to have you guys here. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't done so already, make sure that you review, like, share the podcast with a friend. If you know of a woman or a man, but this is, you guys know this is for women mainly. If you know of a woman who needs encouragement, would just want inspiration, wants to hear an amazing story of a woman who has done fantastic things, send this podcast episode to them or just the show to them. That will help the show and encourage another woman as well. This week, I just got off the interview with my guest for this week, and I'm on a high. I never normally just do an off-the-cuff intro, but I'm doing that today, so we'll see how it goes to my listeners. My guest, Lisa Apple, she had several really hard situations, but one that was incredibly difficult. And she was a music teacher for almost 18 years, middle school choir teacher. And she and a friend of hers decided to write a musical. She's now 46, just moved to New York by herself and working on getting this musical out into the hands of the people who can make things happen in New York City. It is such a neat story. I just really enjoyed my interview with her. If you are a local Dallas person, the show that she has is going to be out in March. And if you want to get tickets to see the show, I put the link in the show notes and I encourage you to go see it. But you're going to have to listen to the episode to learn all about what the show is and learn about Lisa and just get inspired yourself. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Lisa Apple, I am so happy and glad I get to have you joining me today. Welcome to the More Than Your Age podcast.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yes. Well, Lisa, there are a few rich moments in your story that contribute to the woman you are today. We may get into all of it. We may not. It just kind of depends on the time that we have. But I saw a post of yours on Facebook. I have no idea how long ago it was, several months ago, maybe even longer than that, just regarding this new endeavor of yours. Mm-hmm. And I was rooting from you from afar. And I just was like, oh my goodness, I need to invite Lisa on the podcast because your story, in more ways than one, really fits, is a true example of being more than your age, being more than your life circumstance, and then trying something new and hard and using a pain to create an entirely new life for yourself. And so we are going to get into that. You have been a middle school teacher for over 18 years. You just recently left to start this brand new chapter. Mm-hmm. Before this, more recently, had you ever thought you would leave education?
I actually, there were a couple times, it's been, so I'm 17 and a half years I just want to give it the, because I feel like with each semester of teaching, you just earn so many, honors or whatever, as far as just the work that it is. That it's a lot of work. But I had moments of thinking about I think I maybe want to do something different, or I want to kind of pursue some other things. I loved my job, though. I love the students and I love being a teacher, and I had a routine. I loved the people I worked with. It was Prestonwood Christian Academy, and it was just I had such a great experience. And toward the back half, the last 5-ish years, I got we basically built a whole new middle school. And anyway, I had just the most wonderful room with it looked out on there were windows everywhere, and it looked out onto this pond and on the Prestonwood property. And it was just really, really nice. And the kids were great. And I got into a groove. And then, and then I kind of felt okay, this whole next chapter of my life is kind of like calling me, and definitely. So,
Yeah. And you were saying for like about 5 years now is kind of what you felt?
well, for the last, it's probably been like the last year, but the girl that I like, this musical that I co-wrote, she came to me, it's been about 6 years, and she used to also work at PCA, and she had come to me and said like, hey, let's tell the story, let's tell the story of your brother. And we had been working together. She was in middle school theater and I was in middle school choir. And her whole thing was like, I can't find a really good show that's like age appropriate. Like we should just write something. And we always had a good time together and had fun, creative brainstorm sessions. And so that's kind of how that started. And so it's been about actually like 6 years. And so then in the last like 6 to 9 months, I was thinking like, okay, I don't know how this is going to unfold for me to get to New York. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I just kind of felt like this, I think this needs to happen. Like I'm on the back half of really taking a big turn in my life, like I'm not 25. So.
Well, okay. So before we get to kind of when your coworker, your friend kind of came to you, when you were teaching, you also wrote and recorded music as well. How long into teaching did you start writing and recording music, or had that kind of been a part of your life always?
It had always been a part of my life. I would work, and I mean, just like artists do, you like work and you kind of do whatever, and then you take your money and you put it into what you love to do. And so anytime I could save and I had enough money, like I'd record. I think the first thing I recorded was like, I think it was like in 2006 or 2007, and it was just like a 5-song EP. My cousin Chris Hawks down in Austin, he really helped me out like a whole lot with it. And so like songwriting and stuff has always been, and as a songwriter, you want to get your music out there. And so when I was younger, it was like, well, I'll just record and sing my music and stuff. And so and then I did I think it was like 2015 that I did like a full-length album of songs, and that just was like therapeutic, writing about love and family and life, and that's kind of what I like to write about. So, and I was working at PCA at the time and kind of doing both, and so
Did your students know that you wrote music as well?
If they found me online, just, like searching music or whatever, then they knew. But I kind of tried to keep it separate just from the standpoint of like, teaching middle school kids are so funny and, their minds go everywhere. And so, so I like found that I almost had more success the less that they knew about my personal, but I tried to be like motivating and inspiring and talking about, how much I do love songwriting. And so then, I mean, every now and again, there'd be a super inquisitive kid that would, ask. And then I would kind of tell them like, yeah, you can look up my music online. And they're like, what? So a little bit.
Gives you a little more street cred with the middle school kids.
And then there's that. Yeah.
Which is not, why you're doing it. Well, did you also perform yourself a lot, or was it mainly like just write and maybe perform here and there for friends?
It was a little bit more. I mean, it was never really anything, quite honestly, like I didn't have so many years ago, like I really didn't know how to get from like point A to B with having a career like that. But also like, I just had so many insecurities about believing in myself and really having confidence. And it's so funny because I felt like the feedback that I would hear, it's like there was the feedback that I got and then the way that I felt inside, it was like a major disconnect. And so it was 1,000% on me that I performed a little bit, but I never really like pursued it from the standpoint of like, I want to be an artist and I'm going to try to do this. I did gigs every now and again. And it was fun. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was fun, but I just didn't have, I wasn't like, I taught, I had like kind of that stable, I wanted a routine. And that just, I mean, that kind of helped me be creative. But in hindsight, I know like that wasn't, I didn't have enough confidence. So, and everyone, I had a great family, like a lot of support, but it was such a, like, it has to, like, if you don't believe it, if you don't believe that you're capable of something, it does not matter, how many people you have around you building you up. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really true. That's a good perspective with that too. So you started writing and perform very on occasion just because of what what you're saying, like this, this other people coming in and telling you great things about yourself, but then just this lack of confidence in a way in yourself. But you, in this album or, in some of the writing that you wrote, you have a very personal song titled Jamie. Tell me about this song and about Jamie.
Goodness. Yes. Okay. So Jamie is the name of my youngest brother. So there was like four of us. I'm second born and he was the youngest. And as he got older, we called him James, but like always he was the youngest. And so we called him, he was Jamie for us. And so he had, I think when he was around like 19 or 20, he had moved to Nashville to be with my cousin who was at Vanderbilt. And I had been in Nashville. I graduated from Belmont, but I had moved back to Dallas. And so we get a call from my cousin, actually my mom did, and basically just said, like, James is really struggling. And he had this, like, kind of this, a bit of an episode. Like, we did not know what was going on, but it involved my cousin coming home from like one of his classes, and my brother had, like, he was watching Lord of the Rings, and it was almost like he had immersed himself in the movie, but he was a bit having like this psychotic episode. So, my cousin obviously was there and saw it all, but he had been holding knives. He was in no way, it wasn't that he was like wanting to harm my cousin, but I think my cousin was so concerned that he was going to harm himself. And so, like, going a little bit further back, like growing up, James, like my brother was just the most endearing, creative, just super low key. He seemed like he really was like such an easy kid for so long, and just fun and playful, and everything was imaginative and just very creative. And so, and it was like even like in years in middle school and like late middle school when, boys and girls are just, they kind of retreat a little bit because they're trying to figure out where they belong, He was so outgoing, and just everywhere we went, he would talk to people, like at a coffee shop, like he'd ask them questions, or he'd be like, hey, can I come behind can I help you guys? Like, he was just silly and he was fun. And so he had this whole episode, and when he did, I just remember my mom going up there, and she kind of was calling us and giving us updates. And so that song, I wrote that song, and it just, it says, don't give up hope now. You'll find your way. You're on the right side. Keep moving on. We're all behind you now, Jamie. That's kind of like how the chorus goes. And yeah, it was like kind of a healing thing for me, but also a way to kind of express, like, man, I want my brother to get through this, And so, and then flash forward many years, actually probably like 3 or 4. Can I spoiler alert this?
Yeah, at least it's your story. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to just like kind of jump ahead a little bit but in 2010, my brother did pass away. And so I ended up singing that song that I had recorded, like kind of on this first album that I had done. I ended up singing that at his funeral. And I remember, I had friends that were like, how can you do that? Like, what in the world? But it was one of those things where it was like, I don't know if this is as a performer or as an artist or whatever, but like when it comes to do with like honoring someone and like, like wanting to just really recognize them, I knew, I was like, I can do this. And my mom had asked me to do it. And so it was like a no-brainer thing to do. And so then I actually re-recorded that song. And then that's the song that my friend Meg had heard when I re-recorded it anyway. So yeah, super special song to me for sure.
Absolutely. I listened to it yesterday just in preparation and brought tears to my eyes just because I knew part of the story. And
yeah,
just want to say I'm sorry for your loss. And I know the song is so special. And of course it led to what you're doing now. And your coworker, we mentioned her a little bit earlier, Meg, she came up to you one day and said, let's write a musical and tell the story of your brother. When she came up to you, what were your initial thoughts about it?
I thought she was crazy because she kind of is. Just kidding, not really, but we totally.
When she hears this,
yeah, I know.
You're not crazy, Meg. Good crazy.
Yeah, she's gonna be like, that's so typical of Lisa. We tease each other so bad. No, I mean, it was for me, it was a little like, sure, but that's also so much more my personality. And Meg is like, she's like, no, really, she's like, I heard your album. You write, this is your style of writing. And I could just see this. So yeah, those were my initial thoughts. But yeah, things moved. I mean, the ideas and everything with her, like things kind of began to move pretty quickly with coming up with this whole script. And yeah.
When you said finally yes to writing and everything, started to begin, I really love to hear about the writing process and how you decided. Obviously, it was going to be musical because of writing music. How you two were able to come up with everything. She has a theater background, and just I'm so curious how the whole process came to be.
Yeah, it was. Man, it's kind of cool because like looking back, so when we were we had worked in the same place, and so there was a lot of times where like sometimes it was in between classes, or it was like, let's meet before school or let's meet after school. And we would like either get in her office or my office. And it kind of just, it's crazy how we just kind of synced up pretty quick, and the ideas kind of started to flow. Lots of all kinds of ideas, which is why we have so many inside jokes, because from like a collaborating standpoint, we kind of approached it over time. We approached it like we have to say all of the bad, the worst, the dumbest ideas in order to like get to the idea. And there has to be this like shared safety. You know what I mean? Like there has to, like we have to, and we were friends. Like I kind of felt safe with her just in general, like, and I think her with me as well. And so it was kind of an easy like next step to be like, okay, yeah, let's be vulnerable and kind of bounce ideas off of each other. And it was nights and then it was weekends. And actually a lot of it happened. The idea kind of started, I think she came to me because we had both worked a little bit over the summer up at school. I think she came to me over the summer, and then it was like that entire fall of 2019 that we kind of come up with this draft and this script. And what I found is we had first said like, or she had kind of suggested, let's just take some of the songs from your album and kind of plug them in, you know what I mean? Almost like as markers for like what we'll create, but also these songs would work. And so the more we got into it, it's crazy because like I would sit down at the piano at night, like at my house or whatever, and I would start to have memories of like certain things. Like there's a song on the in the musical called Cases Like This. And I remember being in like this psych ward in Fort Worth after the whole thing, like with my brother. So he had this whole other episode past the one that I had mentioned where he went up on top of a billboard and he was naked. I mean, it's like you imagine, oh gosh, what if I get cancer or my mom, or I just use that because it's sadly so prevalent. And then there's other things where you're like, oh, if this happened, like there are things that are just hard in life, but this was one of those things where it was like, I couldn't even imagine, kind of this crazy, truly, act. And he had another pretty intense psychotic episode. He jumps off the second floor of his apartment where his roommates had kind of been trying to talk to him. He starts running down the street of Fort Worth, climbs up this ladder. Anyways, he gets himself on top of this billboard and he's up there for about 6-7 hours. They block off the street, police. We were in like a police van trailer, negotiators negotiating with him. So that whole thing, he came down. 3 days later, me and my mom are sitting across from this doctor, and she's like, not hopeful and not really, positive at all, rightfully so in the field that she's in. And I just remember she was just like, cases like this don't end well. And we're like, you know, this is James. Like, what is he on drugs? Is he like, it didn't even cross our mind that like from a mental capacity that like he may be struggling because he never gave that off. And so I remember sitting at the piano and kind of thinking through that whole scenario. And that's when I wrote the song Cases Like This. It's a little bit for me that the whole process individually has been, very cathartic. And I have to check myself all the time because I want to make sure it just continues to be honoring of the mental, like mental health, my brother, the true story and, meaning of like kind of what we want to get across. But then with Meg, we've had some really good, really hard, collaborating is hard. You have to bring your whole self and good energy, and it's not always that way, and life is just busy and crazy, but it was like we just kept going. And then we entered 2020, and as you know, that actually gave us like a lot of time to like kind of perfect the script and kind of get it and work. And we were, stuck at home and all of that. And so, just kind of more collaborating and coming up with things. And so it's been really good.
Yeah. I can imagine that, like all the things that you said, working well together, then whatever conflict, just because when you're working with someone all the time, that just is inevitable. And then it's bringing up all these feelings and emotions and memories with you and your brother and your family. Was that like a form of therapy for you, or were you kind of seeking additional help as well? Because that's some deep stuff.
Totally. I'm so thankful for this. I feel like I've always been, as much as I had mentioned earlier, like I don't really feel like I was in touch with myself and kind of like, I don't know, like my gifts and really believing in myself, if you will. I have always been so pro, like I'm a verbal processor and kind of an extrovert in that way. And like, if I'm not okay or whatever, and especially with all of that with my brother, I had like such good friends that just kept with me when it was just so weird and like, what is going on, and then I had already had like a lot of kind of therapy around, I remember after my brother passed away, I wasn't attending this church, but at this church, they had this like grief recovery class. And I had 2 roommates at the time. And this was like back in 2010, 11. And I just told my roommates, like, I'm reserving this night. Like it was Tuesday night. So it was this grief recovery class. And I said, I'm reserving this night for my grief, to like hold space for it. And I mean, cause it happened, grief is so weird, it can happen. It comes up. Yeah. Like at any point, but I knew for myself, in order to just fully process like what was going on and not just kind of like sweep it under the rug for it to like rear its ugly head later, cause it does. I had reserved those like Tuesday nights. And so they knew like, when I came home or whatever, and I wasn't like a monster, or anything, or just like, but it was just, I just kind of communicated with them, like, I want to process this and deal with this. And so if I'm just whatever on this specific night. So, and then my family's just really open. Like my mom is kind of amazing in that way. Like she's such an open person. And it wasn't like, we don't talk about this and, and James was fine. It was like, okay, like I remember her calling me one time when she went to Nashville, and she had actually said, she had told all of us, like she went to Nashville to get my brother and all of that with my cousin. And she had said, like, I feel like God gave me Psalm 40. Like I waited patiently on the Lord. He inclined and heard my cry. And then it goes on. He set my foot on a rock. He gave me a new song, a firm place to land. And she said, let's believe that for James. So she's high faith and also just openness. And so it was like, we would go through, times of sitting at dinner after time had passed, after losing my brother, talking, laughing, crying, remembering him. But I bring up that scripture to say, like, at his funeral, my mom, like, actually got up and just said, life is just, we just don't know. Like, and and her words were just like, in the scriptures, whatever you believe, maybe it can take form in another way, but for her and for us specifically, it was like, she just said, the scriptures are so timeless. And she said, because James, he is singing a new song. Like he is in a firm place. Like has his foot set on a rock. Like we didn't know what we were praying, but he was not made for this world for long, And I believe that. And I don't, it's not like, well, it makes me feel better. It's like, man, I knew my brother and I knew that he had faith and all of that. And so anyway, so yes, the process of writing was like cathartic and kind of my own therapy, but we started writing in like 2019. So it was like years later. Sorry, long answer, all of them.
No, but I want to say to your mom, she just sounds like she's very strong, an incredible woman.
She is. She really is. Thank you. Yeah. She's awesome.
I'm glad you have her. I'm sure you are too.
Oh my gosh. Yes. She's wonderful. She actually wrote a book, by the way. It's called Flourish Because. So I don't know. You may want to interview her.
Maybe so. All right, Mom. When you listen to this,
I know.
we'll chat soon. Okay. Well, so Lisa, so you and Meg, you're writing this musical. And did you have a basic, like, were you looking at other musicals just to see kind of the flow of what musicals looked like? Or were you both just pretty knowledgeable of how musicals work, the scripts and everything?
Yeah, that's a good question. We got to a point, like, after a couple of years where we were like, okay, we need to make the ending more compelling, or we need to do this. But I kind of going into it, we had definitely kind of both had she's more into like I say regular, like non-musical theater. And in film, she was into film. She lived in LA for a little bit and did some stuff out there. So but her knowledge of like script writing and all of that really helped. And then I think my knowledge of like musicals was good, but we got to a point a couple of years into it where we were like, okay, we wanted to like change up the ending, or we just didn't feel like it was compelling. It just kind of the way that we ended it. So we started looking, and we had all these ideas, and we literally started looking around at these specific musicals, and we're like, okay, there's literally nothing new under the sun. Like so many of these ideas have been done. So then we were just like, quit looking and like stick to kind of the authenticity of the story. And that's really, I don't want to say that's all we have, but like, yeah, we've kind of also gotten to where we've had to pick and choose, like, what are we willing to keep with this story? Because it's about my family. And like, what are the non-negotiables, and then what are we willing to like kind of give creative liberties to? And so that's been interesting, and fun. And yeah, like we've learned a lot from it also, just from people that we've talked with along the way. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just even think about with both of your backgrounds. Yes, you have musical, or you have choir, musicals, and then Meg has acting, theater background, and just combining these two to create something that is super powerful and meaningful to you. And so now it's, 6 years later, you produced it in Dallas, and you'll produce it again this March. Where was it shown originally in Dallas? And then how did you find director and the actors? And I want to know about that process too. It's just so fascinating.
Yeah. Well, in the first time we did it in Dallas was like 22, I think. And it was basically like a preview, like the first kind of time to put it up fully. And it was like not fully. It was, the actors still had they didn't have to memorize their, it was kind of a little bit of a read through, but kind of more than that, there was blocking and stuff. And so we posted about it. So that was at Genesis Theater in Plano, which oddly enough was literally like a couple blocks from the house where my brother, like where we grew up. And so it was like the grocery store where we used to go. It's this pretty cool, great people, this children's theater in Plano, Genesis Children's Theater. And Meg she had done a lot of work there. And so they were so gracious and awesome to let us like use their facility and even have some rehearsals there. And then we just posted about the musical. And it's interesting because, in your own town, I don't know, maybe if it's like, it's Dallas, Fort Worth, but like when you're doing something new, it's like people want what they know and what they recognize. And it is interesting, like how people can be very skeptical of like something that is new. And some people are totally into that, like they're into new works. And then there's other people that are like, they're not really interested in it. And so we learned pretty quickly, like, okay, we got to get creative with like how we're going to find people. But it was like one person led to the other person who recommended so-and-so. And then we linked arms with this guy. His name is Heath Bromley, and he's actually kind of like a partner in our show. He helps us a whole bunch with like finances and things like that Meg and I are, well, at least that I'm like, oh gosh, there like we wear so many hats. This whole time we've worn so many hats, but he came along. He actually was in our first like read through that we had at my house like a couple weeks before COVID. But then yeah, when we did our first preview, he was actually in our first preview now that I think about it. But then the following year, I think it was 2023, we produced it at Richardson United Methodist Church, because they had a really good deal, and they have a really, like, their contemporary worship center it was great. It was like a great stage, great facility. It's hard to get on people's calendars and theaters and things like that if they don't really know, if they're not familiar. And then Meg directed it. I musical directed it. We've kind of done that the whole time. And she's really good at like scenic design, costumes, colors, lights, and I'm good at music. I'm like, oh, like, what can I do? But what's interesting is that the music piece of it is like, so, like, I didn't set out to just like, well, I'll write a lead sheet with the melody and the piano. It was like, oh, I'm going to add a violin. Oh, I'll add another violin. Oh, and a cello. Oh, the drums. And so now I don't have like a full score, but I kind of have this fully scored. So the first time we did it, we spent a lot of money on getting like live musicians, and it was like so magical. And then after that, we're like, okay, well, we can't afford that anymore. But we ended up making an album, which really helped with having like tracks. And so when we did it in 2023, we used tracks, and yeah. And then it was like the summer. So that was 23. I feel like it was after that, like this past July in 2024 is when we got invited to come here to New York to 54 Below, and we just did like a music showcase. So
wow, what was it like when you got invited?
Well, Meg is such a hustler. That's another thing about her. Like, I'm learning. Like, I'm here in New York now, and I'm just like trying to channel like Meg's like her intense, don't take no for an answer, go get him, So which is good. Like, I'm like, okay, this is part of like I'm growing and learning. But it was. Yeah, so she had reached out to just tons of theaters around her and around here, and then 54 Below replied, and they're like, "We'd love to have you guys. Like, this looks interesting and great." And so, I think it was like December. Yes, it was December of 2023. That it was literally like right after Christmas, either the day before or after. I don't even remember, but it was just like, oh my gosh, like Merry Christmas! Like, what in the world, we're gonna do this? And it was July 18th, I think, July 18th. And so yeah, that process was like, okay, what money do we have? Who wants to go with us? Like, how can we pay people? Which we really couldn't. And so when we did it this past July at 54 Below, we helped everybody get here. And it was like we were taking tons of people from Dallas with us because they were great. And they had done the show the May before, just great people. Some people we found in Dallas. I actually forgot to mention this. The show, when we did it in May of 2023, the way that I found our lead guy that plays James, I was scrolling TikTok and I come across this guy, and I had reached out to, just as I'm scrolling, like several. I sent him an email. He was so great. His name is Jack Austin. I mean, what a great name also, so good. But he emailed me, and I didn't even get the I did not expect the email, so I didn't even see the email come in. And then like a week later, he emails again, and he's like, "Hey Lisa, I don't know if you got my email. I mean, this guy has like literally like almost 100,000 followers." And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like this guy replied, like, and so I'm telling Meg, and she's like, reply. Like, what are you doing? Like, get it together. So anyway, he's been such a wonderful, he's very talented. He certainly has his sights set on being here in New York very soon. And yeah, like he'll actually be with us in May at our 29-hour reading that we're going to have this May. But he joined us in Dallas. We basically had Zoom rehearsals. And then a week before the show, he came, and actually he was in our preview as well. He was in our first preview. A week before the show, he came and had to like immerse himself in the blocking, like in everything. And there were points where you just see on his face, because he's like 20, he's just like, what in the world? But he did so good, like a true, just like he's gold, such a true talent. Because every time we did it, and then when we did it in May, I mean, anyway, very, very talented. So,
wow. And, since he's playing Jamie, your brother, like, I don't know, I'm sure there's a special connection. Yeah.
They're total. It's such a neat, it's really neat. Like even with him, and then, I mean, it feels like all of them though, like with the girl that plays the mom, she's like mom, her and my mom, like, it's so sweet. Crazy thing, about the girl that played, her name is Laura. She actually lost her son in a car accident, I believe when he was 19. And so this opportunity comes along for her. And we didn't know it for like a while, but then she like pulled me aside and she's like, you have no idea. Like this role for me she's like, she's like, I don't have to really dig very deep for this. Like it's right here, all of this as I'm going through these lines. And the things that people have told us, I mean, on that note, like when you do a show like this that's so raw and so vulnerable, not to jump too far ahead, but it's amazing. Like, it is amazing what people will tell you, or they'll tell you, I've never told anyone this, but my uncle or my aunt or me, like some of the things that people will tell you. And that's part of this whole journey with both Meg and I. That's like, you can't really put a dollar amount on that, and you can't put like a success. We did good. But every step of the way, it's like, if it ended here, if it ended tomorrow, this is enough to get to hear people's stories and give space to a topic, in kind of a theatrical setting where people can kind of sit back and process. And I mean, that is, what theater is, but it's just been really beautiful. So,
man, I bet. I mean, so much for you, your family, and then these other people, like you said, that you didn't even know that that somehow would touch them, and even more who will get to see it down the road. Will you touched base too that now you're living in New York. You just moved there, big move. It's been fun for me to see. For the listeners, Lisa's been sharing her apartment search. You found one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. She found one. And you also said too that something's happening in May, this big read. Tell us about that. You want to get the show off the ground off Broadway and on Broadway, and eventually licensed to schools. So tell us about the move. Tell us about the hopes and dreams for the musical and your time in New York.
Yeah. So, well, Meg and I hope to write more musicals together. Like we're kind of we're starting another one that's like, has nothing to do with any of my family and is not true. So I feel like, like that'll be fun to kind of get to do that with her in that way. But, we decided to, after we did 54 Below in July, it's like we, went back to Texas, and I, picked up another year of teaching, and so did she. And she's in Texas, like she's married, she's got 2 boys, and she's actually at like a different private school now. But throughout all of last fall, yeah, we were talking about like, okay, we got to ride this momentum of like, we were in New York, and our end goal, it is to have it licensed, like to get it ideally licensed by MTI, but to get it just with a licensing company. And what we understand about that process is that a musical kind of has to like go all the way up, and then it's like, that's when it's picked up. And then the licensing process is just, then it can go out to high schools and colleges to be reproduced. And so a 29-hour reading in New York is kind of like it's like a part of the process of developing a musical, and it takes producers and it takes investors. It's not cheap, but you basically, like, as writers, we hand the script over to a director here in New York who I'm pretty sure that we have secured, which is super exciting. She seems really cool and excited about kind of partnering with us, and she'll also like kind of get in the script with us and help us with the structure and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, we'll eventually hand her the script. And then May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we just thought like it'd be appropriate and good timing to do this during that time. And so I am here. It was a very hard decision to leave in the middle of the semester at my school. Like, that's not really a thing to do. But I felt like the time is now. And I also kind of felt like if I don't leave, I may never leave. And I didn't really want to leave. But as far as this whole thing has come, I mean, I get like emotional about it. We could not have planned how this has evolved. And so and I'm such a hard sell. Like, I still get down on myself. Like, I'm the type that's like, yeah, it could be better. And Meg is like, it's good. It's good enough, And I'm like, no, I don't know. It's okay, And so this has been such a, like a learning process, a growing process for me as a person to just, I hate to say to go with the flow, but to kind of like, to see reality, to like see that this musical, it's evolving, and we work so hard. And so being here means meeting actors and actresses, meeting producers, meeting investors, like, and just, it's crazy how, like, coming from Dallas, how the world is like so small. Like, so many people have like put me in contact with other people that are on Broadway or like music directors or whatever. And so I left my school, and it was very hard, and it still is. Like, I'm still just like, what, I did that. I also feel very fortunate, very grateful. Like, I had been in a situation where I had money saved, and the last like couple years, I've been living with my parents, like in a very small, like I have a small room. Like, I've just been living like I was living in a New York apartment,
Yeah.
like I literally just have this like small space. And so it just, it's like it made sense for me to make this transition. I don't anticipate it. Honestly, like I love it here. This is where musicals happen. Like, this is where things I think will happen for our show. I don't want to be here forever. I love Texas. I love my family. I love going to my niece and nephew's basketball and soccer games, and like, I miss it all so much. And so there's certainly a level of sacrifice that has come with, and I'm such a people person, whatever. So yeah, but we are hopeful that after the 29-hour read, we are very hopeful that it could go a lot of different directions. And so I don't even really want to speak into like exactly, ideally there would be enough investors or enough like buy-in that it would get picked up off Broadway and eventually move to on Broadway. And it could be commercial in that way to really get to more audiences and to more people. But we also trust that like it's going to go where it's supposed to go for the people that are supposed to see it at the time that they're supposed to see it,
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think too so for the listeners too, we're recording early February, and your episode, I believe, is going to come out in early March or mid-March, but your show that you're producing it in Dallas. Is that open for people to see?
Yes, it will be. So our show is going to be March 13th through the 16th. Actually, for you today, tickets will go on sale this Friday. And so the show that we're doing in March it's going to be at an art gallery in Dallas, like this new up and coming art gallery called Gallery DeFi. And actually the cool thing about the gallery is that my brother James, his best friend Trey, he co-owns this gallery. And so we've kind of come alongside each other, and he's super excited. His name is Trey Swafford. And yeah, Gallery DeFi has been, they're great. They're excited. It's kind of random to do it in an art gallery, but they have the space and the facilities. And so we're hoping we're hoping that each night will sell out, and that's a big, like, we're hoping that will help us with the money to what happens in May. Yeah. I mean, that's a huge part of it. But then also to just kind of, it's been a little bit since we've done it in Dallas. And so, yeah, we're super excited. A lot of the same cast, which is kind of fun because it's a bit of a family now. So I meant to mention also the girl that plays me in the show. It's been a really cool, her name's Michaela, and it's been a really cool, she feels like a little sister. It's cool.
Wow,
So,
that's
anyway,
so neat.
yeah.
Lisa, I'm probably going to bump your episode up then so that people, especially people in the Dallas area, I want them to come see this. So I'm going to look after we get off. Yeah,
Sure.
Absolutely. After we get off, I'm going to look at the calendar and I'll rearrange everything and that.
Thank you.
Well, okay. I'm just so excited for you just to see what happens with this, where this takes off. And like you said, even if it just ended now, which is not going to, but even if it did, there's been a purpose, there's been a story in that. Something you shared with me too is that you went through a really rough patch to find yourself again, and now you feel like you have found yourself again. How long did it take you to get back to you?
I would say I was like sort of on the journey for longer, but I would say like really focusing and like doing some kind of hard internal work for like about 2 years. So yeah, went through like didn't really know who I was, but knew like, well, I live in Texas and I'm in my 30s and I should get married. I mean, I wanted to get married. I wanted to have kids, like wanted to do the whole thing. And so, yeah, like that, I ended up meeting someone and just sort of like, I didn't know, again, like I had a lot of like codependency issues and things like that. And just thought, well, I'm supposed to just, always prefer the guy and help him and this and that. And I like took so much of it literally. And then, I look back on the whole, like it wasn't a super long marriage, but like it was several years too many. But I look back on all of that and I'm so thankful. Like there are little patches of my life where I do look back and go, gosh, I wish I had known this about myself then or this. But I do look back on that time in my life of being married. And I am thankful because I really do think it was like almost the thing that I needed to, like, I feel like I've like had this, it sounds like such a cliche, but I do kind of feel like I had this awakening of like, oh my gosh, like I've not been in touch with myself at all. And I've not known how to listen to my intuition and my gut and like, what is the right thing? And I wasn't like living a free for all life. I was actually living, it was good. But in terms of really knowing how to like take care of myself as a woman and how to have boundaries, man, I was like so far off course. And so, yeah, the way everything kind of unfolded with my ex was just, I mean, it's never easy and fun, but I'm thankful. I'm thankful for him. And I'm thankful that, I don't know, I feel like God just like kind of picked me up and was like, okay, like now it's time to do some, work on yourself. And now you're alone and you're living in your parents' house. And I mean, and there were some really dark days of just kind of feeling like I'll always be a mess, like I'll always be an emotional mess or always have turmoil. And it's not true. I mean, it takes a lot of work. It's not just like, well, I'll watch some Instagram videos and do a little bit of, or like read this or, I mean,
right.
Yeah, the wellness industry is like thriving and I don't really know that we're getting, but to really kind of heal and put things together, it's like, it takes hope, it takes belief and a lot of work, like a lot of like, so, and a huge part of that, I have a neuro coach, oddly enough, this woman named Libby Briscoe. And I thought at one point in my life, like, I thought like after I got divorced, like, I don't know how I missed that. Like, I don't really know how that went south and like how I picked the wrong guy or how that all evolved. And that scared the crap out of me. Like to not know, like, because then I was just like, I'm going to do it again. Like, I'm going to heal and everything and do counseling. I'd done all that stuff, but my mom actually told me about her And it was this whole, it wasn't, it was this whole process of like teaching me, I mean, this whole talking about rewiring your brain, not like connecting things to your brain, but the actual work of becoming more aware of like listening to your thoughts and getting to decide like that doesn't have to be true, but it's definitely a bit of a journey, but I feel so free, so thankful, so much more confident. Yeah. And like I have things to offer, like I have advice and this is my experience and I don't really regret it because man, there were so much golden moments that I still look back on that make me so thankful to wake up currently alone. I do have a boyfriend. He's fabulous, but that's another story. Peace in Dallas. So just shout out.
Oh, hey, boyfriend.
Anyway, sorry, I just had to get that in there. Okay.
Well, and it's, I mean, I know you said you're glad you went through that because also at the same, like you would never want to go through that again, right? But in a way, glad you went through that because then now you wouldn't be where you are now and the confidence where you are at now and just all the things that you've worked through. I mean, and I don't even know in the timeline of everything. Did you, when you were married, had you started writing the musical or was that after the fact?
It was like, I think maybe 3 or 4 years into being married. And things were pretty bad and we kind of just like did our own thing. And so, and like during COVID and stuff, but yeah, I look back and I'm like, well, that worked out because he certainly had enough hobbies to just keep himself busy and we would do things together here and there. But that's kind of when I just sat and wrote, a lot of it. So, yeah.
So more than one kind of grieving options in that. Yeah.
Many options. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So you had mentioned you were 36 when you got married, one of the last among your friends. Now, since you're no longer with him, how old are you now?
I'm 46.
46. Okay. Hey, this is More Than Your Age podcast, Lisa. We are proud of our ages here.
That's right. 46.
Yes. You're doing these exciting things that you never imagined that you would do.
Uh-huh.
We're running out of time. So I'm going to kind of morph my last 2 questions together that I'd love to hear from you. So one is the one I ask all my guests and the other one is I'm curious to know. So question number 1 is what would you say to single Lisa at 35 or, whenever who wanted to be married and maybe I know at the time probably felt so old. And then if you could also in the same note, 2 parts, encourage one woman who may feel blocked or limited to pursue a dream or goal based on her specific age or life circumstance. There is a you had several life circumstances with you. So what would you say to her?
I would say, first of all, like to the kind of the first question, I would say, I mean, gosh, I feel like this bursting such a bubble, but I would say like marriage is that whole like kind of that dream for the girl that grows up in Texas in church and everything. Like to me, that was like I see it all the time. I see it where I work or where I used to work at PCA. It's like that's like the end goal, and it's just not. And it can be, but unfortunately, we've kind of reduced a lot of. How do I say this? I do think that in a lot of circles, like being a woman is reduced to, and I don't say this like, because all of my friends have kids and being a mother. So it's not reduced to, but it's about having kids and it's about being a wife. And what's so crazy is like, if those things don't happen or if they don't happen in the timeline, it's sort of this interesting, well then, like where are we left? Like what is and obviously, we're told that our value is, of course, in so many other things and our gifts and what we pursue. And like, there's so many other opportunities, but I grew up with kind of this underlying, but yeah, this would really be the best, And so I would say you really have to like listen to yourself. And if you're entrenched in communities where you're like, I'm not really sure, like, I don't know how this is going to pan out for me. If you have good friends, great. Like you need good friends and you need a good support system and you need people that will really support you if you're like, I don't know if I'm going to get married or I don't know about having kids or it could be anything. Like I want to pursue this, whatever, like something that might be kind of outlandish, but it's true. It's like if that's in your heart, and sometimes it takes a long time to hear that, sometimes it takes a long time to like hear that voice that says like, no, this is it. This is it. You went over here again, like come back. This is it. But it's there. Like if you stop and think about it, like everybody, it may not be a big, huge thing or, something that in a certain environment or whatever is really, esteemed. But I think it takes time to stop and listen, and then to realize like at the end of the day, you lay your head down at night and all you have is you and your thoughts, and you're like answering to God. And it's not about like, well, God didn't do this. He didn't do this. He didn't give me this. It's like, what did you do? And it's not about what everyone else did or what they did to you or what they didn't do. It's like, no, and life is, it's kind of scary that way. But then it's also, it's so rewarding because I think there's a place for everybody, and it takes a lot of work, But yeah, the whole like following your dream and stuff. And I mean, I'll probably be following my dream till I'm like 80. So I don't know that I could necessarily speak to, but I think the second that you feel like your dream is dying, I do kind of think that's when you go like, okay, I need to reassess, and I need to decide like, where is there a need, or where is there, like, what else do I love to do? So, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I love it. And I love it too, how you just said, not looking at what is, everyone else or somebody else. It's yourself, because if we go down that rabbit hole, we're going to keep digging and it's not going to end.
Yeah. Or like follow someone else's dream, or I mean, like.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much. Please share where Dallas folks can purchase tickets, because I will release this before the show and plenty of time too. So where can they get tickets and follow along and learn more about you and your musical?
Yeah. So if you go to like on Instagram, you can go on Instagram to Boy on Billboard. Also, let me pull up. Hold on a second. I'm going to make sure I get the right website. The tickets. You can also go to boyonbillboard.com. But if you go to, there it is. Okay. If you go to just Google, and the website will come up for Gallery DeFi, and it's DEFI. They are selling the tickets on their website. But you can also, you can DM our Boy on Billboard account. We all check it, Megan, Heath, and I. And and it's March 13th through the 16th. And yes, that we would love. We're working on it now, and so we're super excited.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Can't wait. Yes, absolutely. And I'll put that in the show notes too for people to check out if they didn't grab it the first time listening to it. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for taking the time, sharing your story, sharing your heart. I appreciate you joining me today on the More Than Your Age podcast.
Thank you, Erica.
If you were encouraged by today's episode, like and subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend. You can find me on all of the socials at More Than Your Age. Keep striving for your goals, live fully, and we'll catch you next time on the More Than Your Age podcast. Thank you for staying and listening to thoughts that I want to share, that I'm going through or learning through, that can hopefully encourage you as well, in addition to the episode. I want to kind of go, this one is off the cuff as well, just like my intro was. I want to go off of just kind of what Lisa had shared from her interview, just what I got from it, just some takeaways. She experienced insane grief of losing her brother, and then she also lost a marriage that, wasn't the best situation for her. But I want to speak to just losing her brother. I cannot relate to that. I can relate to losing my cousin in a tragic way and losing my son. And, when we go through really difficult things like that, it's super easy to question God's goodness. And a lot of us can go through that. And I was talking with someone actually the other day about just grief and loss and how hard it is. And she said, man, I'm surprised, not surprised, but in a way just said like, a lot of people really get mad and angry at God for him allowing this to happen or letting this happen. And, you know, there's definitely moments in my life where I've questioned God for the things that He does. But it's so important, especially for those of us who are professing Christians, believers, that we keep our focus on the Lord and study Scripture. Because when we're in the Scripture, we can see that we aren't the only ones suffering. It happens all the time. And people go through some really, 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 really hard things. And God provides, He takes care of, He allows things to happen. And there's also more of what's going on. And the thing that I shared with the lady I spoke with the other day was that if I if I don't honor God, or if I, say, you did this, why did you do this? And like get mad at him, I'm letting Satan win, because the opposite of God's goodness is Satan. And, if you don't believe in that, he's real and he does exist. And so I just, I said, if I get angry at God, I like, woe is me, why did he do that? Then I am allowing and letting Satan win. There is no way that I want to do that. He does not get the glory in my pain. He gets no recognition in that. And so I think it's so important. When we grieve, we got to grieve. We have to grieve. We have to go through it. We need to either seek counseling, do whatever we need to do in that. But for me, I have zero desire of allowing Satan to win. I want to give God glory. He's the creator of the universe and he deserves that. So just some of my thoughts I wanted to share with you after speaking with Lisa and listening to her story and hearing what she decided to do in the midst of her grief and how she is being more than her age and more than her life circumstance. Thanks for listening.